A reading from Luke chapter 8, beginning at verse 22. One day Jesus got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they set out, and as they sailed, he fell asleep. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in danger. And they went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said to them, "Where is your faith?" And they were afraid, and they marvelled, saying to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even winds and water, and they obey him?" Now, to get some sense of what is going on here, you need to realise, first of all, that the lake that they're talking about here is the Sea of Galilee, or the Sea of Tiberias sometimes, or sometimes Lake Gennesaret, 3 different names for the same body of water. So get out of your mind some sort of small lake in a municipal park somewhere. This is no boating lake, this is the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is 8 miles wide at its widest point. So when Jesus says to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake," he's got quite something in mind. There's quite a stretch of water they've got to cross, and it would take quite some time. And the disciples, certainly those of them who are fishermen, would know all of this. They'd know this wasn't some paddling around, but this was something that may take some exertion. 8 miles wide, but also 140 feet deep at its deepest. So this is a dangerous place, particularly as at that time most fishermen couldn't swim. So when Jesus says, "Let us go over to the other side of the lake," and off they go, well then this is a normal journey, but one that sometimes isn't safe. Why? Well, because as in this instance, the wind can whip up quickly. It's all to do, I'm told, with the range of hills that you have around the Sea of Galilee and thermals and things like that. But whatever causes it, sometimes winds can come down quickly and a squall can form in the Sea of Galilee, as happened here. So this isn't just a bit windy as they go across a boating lake. This is in a vast body of water. The wind has whipped up and water is coming into the boat. This is quite some storm, and Jesus is asleep. And so they wake him up. They know the dangers. "Master, Master," they say, "we are perishing." And then, wonders of wonders, he stands up and he stills the storm with his voice. And this, I would think, is scary. Because after all, normally speaking, nature doesn't listen to reason. Normally speaking, you can't issue a command to the clouds and they do something and the storm and it does something else. No wonder they were fearful. Fearful first because they were sinking, fearful second because the storm had been stilled by Jesus. They cried out, "Who is this then, that he commands even the winds and water?" And they obey him. This is astonishing stuff. But is it fair then for Jesus to say, "Where is your faith?" There's a rebuke here. And I have to say that I have some sympathy with the disciples. If I was on a boat and I could see the boat was sinking, I would have woken Jesus up so that he would help. In fact, you might even argue that the fact that they woke him up at all is a sign of their faith in him, that he would do something, and if nothing else would help with the buckets. But yet he rebuked them. Elsewhere, Jesus does praise the faith of other people. He praises those 4 who lower down the paralysed man through the roof. He praises the woman who wiped his feet with her hair. And yet the disciples were criticised here. Why was that? Now, the disciples had seen, or at least heard of, Jesus performing great wonders. They'd had the benefit of being taught by Jesus himself. They had responded to his call to follow them. They'd left all else behind and they'd followed him. They knew Jesus was somebody to be trusted. They knew he was somebody to be followed. They knew that he was somebody on whom the divine favour rested. And so maybe when he had said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake," Or just maybe they should have had the faith that to the other side of the lake they would go. Storm or not, the farthest shore would be reached. Squalls are not the end of it in the economy of Christ. A wind and a storm may come up, but Jesus has said, well, go to the other side. To the other side they would go, even if trouble occurred on the way. And even in that instance, it might all be dispelled by a single word from Jesus himself. So in the end, the point here, I think, why Jesus rebukes them is because of trust, faith. It's easy, you see, when everything goes well to have faith in God, but when it doesn't, as panic sets in, as doubts nip at your heels, do you lose your trust and your faith in God? You don't lose your trust that the existence of God. You don't lose your Christian faith, but do you question the fact whether he's forgotten you or overlooked you in some way? But at times we do walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and even there the Lord remains our shepherd. His rod and his staff still protect us. We will still go across to the other side of the lake. So I wonder if I might make a suggestion to you. Treasure this passage up in your heart so that it's ready for when difficulties strike. The storm does not mean that Christ is not present or that his promises are failing you. You may struggle, you may find things tough, but you will make it to the other side. In fact, faith comes into its own when everything looks darkest. So in times of difficulty, when the storms of life come down or whipping up around you, perhaps you may remember a quote, a hymn even, from that old sailor, John Newton. A word from Jesus calms the sea, the stormy wind controls, and gives repose and liberty to tempest-tossed souls.